Welcome to the Clash Royale card tier list, but ranked by an idiot who plays the game casually. This list will not take into account the meta, and will mostly be on my experiences with the cards and how they can be used more casually. However, I will try to be objective if there is a card that I really like, but it sucks. Also, evolutions will be kind of separate, as their placement is more in relation to other evos, since all of them are at least B tier compared to other cards. And finally, the cards will not be ranked inside their tiers. With that said, let's start tier listing. First, we start with the Tower Princess, S tier. She's the best tower troop as of now. She's the classic and has been in the game from the beginning, and is fundamental to how the game works. Cannoneer, F tier. He is awful, just awful. For being an epic tower troop, he has less health, less damage against swarms, and in general sucks. Knight, B tier. It's a decent tank and certainly has its uses, but it's not too good from my experiences. Evolution Knight. In terms of against normal cards, he's A tier, but as an evolution, he's a C tier. He just doesn't seem to get much value, and even when he is used against me, he just doesn't do anything. I suppose a good player could make use of his tank ability, but I just don't find a use for him. Archers, B tier. They're definitely good, but get outclassed by other ranged cards. Evo Archers, A tier. They easily get value on defense, but if you place them wrong or your opponent has a fireball, they just die. Goblins, A tier. It's a very good swarm card that's great on defense. Minions, C tier. Gets countered by arrows, has lowish health and damage. Really only good against aerial tanks. Giant, C tier. I haven't really used him since the beginning of the game. He's an okay tank, but is outclassed as job by most other units. I guess he's okay if you're playing a cheaper golem deck. Musketeer, A tier. Good damage, great on defense, and isn't the worst on offense. Mini P.E.K.K.A, B tier. Good on defense, but gets obliterated by skeletons or goblins. I find it dies way too easily. Spear Goblins. Decent swarm card or archer replacement, but has extremely low health and damage. Goblin Hut, C tier. Not too sure why people say it's so garbage. It's a little expensive, but it can be very annoying. Goblin Cage, C tier. Good on defense, but the brawler dies really easily, and doesn't really help out much. Arrows, A tier. Great for dealing with most swarms, but is useless against larger support cards like Executioner or other larger cards. Fireball, S tier. I love this card. It's so dangerous and just so effective against most cards. The knockback is also a nice bonus, and doing predictions with it are awesome. Skeletons, B tier. They're good on defense and can ship the Cannoneer, but goblins are better on defense in almost every way. Evolution Skeletons. As a card, B tier. As an evolution, D tier. This card just doesn't do anything. Although against the Cannoneer it's very good. However, anything with an area attack deletes it. Bomber, C tier. It's fine, but the fact it can't hit air units drags it down. Valkyrie. I always hear stuff about how Valkyrie sucks, but I think she's really good. A tier. Evo Valkyrie, A tier. She's so good as a tank and not stupidly overpowered. Her tornado pole also makes her super strong against pushes. Tombstone, B tier. I like using it as a Yu-Gi-Oh! Trap card. Also, offensive Tombstone works now against the Cannoneer. Barbarian, F tier, F tier. One fireball and it's gone. It's such a bad card. Evolution Barbarians. Why do people say this card is good? I've never seen it be good. One fireball and log and they're gone. Any good area unit and they're gone. D tier, slightly better than the normal Barbarians. Meh, it's fine, but not great. Although a defensive building is a defensive building. C tier. Mega Minion. I hear jokes about how the card was the meta minion, but this card doesn't do much. It's a much weaker aerial mini P.E.K.K.A, C tier. Battle Ram. It's not really that viable of a win condition, since it can't even get past defensive buildings, and Cannoneer is really good against it. The Barbarians don't even do that much damage. C tier. Fire Spirit, B tier. It's good for chipping and defense, but it's worse than other spirits. Skeleton Dragons, D tier. It's a worse baby dragon and it dies way too easily. Electro Spirit, A tier. Not the best spirit, but he's still strong and is pretty good on defense. Although the fact that he's a free King Tower activation definitely does not help. Wizard, I don't know, I've heard he sucks, but I think he's at least okay. D tier. The area splash is good, he has good damage and is a great support unit. He's just a bit expensive. Inferno Tower, B tier. B tier. It has super high damage and does great against the more common tanks like P.E.K.K.A and Megaknight. It's just a little expensive. Bomb Tower. A tier. Such a good defensive building, with the only issue being not hitting air. But then again, the only swarm cards that are air are minions, bats, and minion hordes, so that doesn't really matter. Bats. C tier. Kind of weak in my opinion. Good on defense, good as support. Evo Bats. C tier, one of the weaker Evos, and I don't really see the point of the card. The healing doesn't make that much of a difference. Mortar, A tier, such a good win condition and will usually get value. It's even really good at defense. Evo Mortar, S tier, it's Mortar but better. Zap, A tier, it's a good small spell but doesn't do as much damage as the Log or the Barbarian Barrel. Flying Machine, D tier, it's like the Skeleton Dragons and I've never seen it be used. It's a worse musketeer with less health. Hog Rider, S tier all the way, this card is awesome. While being a meme, it's still such a good card. Rocket, C tier, it never seems to hit and it's way too slow for being a rocket. But it does have high damage and is good for getting rid of towers over the course of a match. Not a card I use, but it's not awful. Witch. Like Wizard, I hear about how bad this card is, but I don't think it's the worst. D tier. P.E.K.K.A. C tier, it gets countered way too easily and rarely does anything outside of defense. Skarmy. C tier, gets countered way too easily in the late game. Baby Dragon. B tier, he has splash damage and is pretty tanky, but he gets killed by most projectile units. Goblin Barrel. C tier, it rarely gets value, but on the rare chance it does take a ton of health. However, most people have Logger arrows, so this chance is rare. Guards. C tier, their shield is good, but they're a bit expensive, and the shield doesn't make too much of a difference. Royal Giant. It's a pretty good win condition, but like other giants, it's really slow and easily countered. However, it is super strong when it does connect, so B tier. Evolution Royal Giant. My god, this card is so annoying. If you don't have a building in cycle, say goodbye to your tower because he does so much damage. S tier. Royal Recruits. B tier. They're so expensive and the recruits are easily countered. Evo Recruits. A tier. They are good but a bit on the weaker side compared to the other Evos. Three Musketeers. Absolute trash and yet somehow I get destroyed by the one person who uses it. It is such a stupid card, but I have to put it in D tier for the fact that it can do a ton of damage. Royal Hogs. B tier. It can be good in spammy decks, but it's expensive and easily countered by buildings or fireball. Balloon. I don't play Balloon often, but it is so annoying, so I'm gonna have to go with A tier. Prince. C tier. He has extremely high damage, but gets countered really easily. Dark Prince. A tier. Great on defense, good damage, good splash, and has a shield. Ice Spirit. S tier. Such good value on defense and good for chipping towers. Evo Ice Spirit. As a card, I suppose S tier because Ice Spirit is S tier, but as an evolution, D tier. F tier when it was 3 cycles. It doesn't do that much and has no bonus effects. Giant Snowball. It's one of the weaker small spells and its pushback is all it really has. C tier. Ice Golem. B tier, good for kiting, but he doesn't have very high health and does no damage. He's just a good tank. Battle Healer. D tier, it's such an annoying card that I hate playing against. It just makes no sense, and this card is such an enigma, where if it's played with other dog crap cards like Elixir Golem, it's OP, but in every other scenario, it's the most annoying thing ever. Giant Skeleton. C tier, another extremely annoying card. The bomb is so annoying and if it gets on your tower, you die. Freeze. B tier, another annoying card. Wow, Arena 8 had some of the most annoying stuff ever. This card is fine, but it's very annoying. Lightning. D tier. High damage, but not as much as the Rocket, and only hits 3 cards. It's not that great. Goblin Gang. A tier. Air defense, ground defense, swarm, it has it all. Skeleton Barrel. C tier. It can be effective, but like Goblin Barrel, one log and it gets countered. It doesn't even have the benefit of going wherever you want, since it has to fly over to the tower first. Dark Goblin. A tier. A great long-range damage deal and anti-air. Barbarian Hut. F tier. This card does nothing for its cost. Yippee! 3 barbarians that get countered by literally anything. It's not even good on defense, as it costs so much elixir. Goblin Giant. I don't know how a 6% health buff made this card go from dog crap to meta defining, but Goblin Giant is so annoying to face. Especially paired with the Sparky. A tier, since it never dies. Barbarian Barrel. S tier. Good damage, the Barbarian can stop pushes, and in general is a good small spell to compete with the Log. Poison. A tier. Very similar to the Fireball, but I think the instant damage is better than the damage over time. Minion Horde. F tier. Should I say more? Elite Barbarians. A tier. Another annoying card, but this time they can somewhat consistently get value. You usually waste a bit more than 6 elixir defending, and the cards are decent on defense. Hidden Tesla. S tier. Top 2 buildings in my opinion. High damage and great for kiting. It's just a good card. Zappies. B tier. These guys can get a lot of value against tanks, and if used properly, can basically freeze a single card, but they have relatively low damage and die easily. Furnace. C tier. I joke with my friends that the chip is real with this one. Yes, I got my One Piece reference for the video in. Anyways, this card is good for getting chip damage, except it isn't. It's okay on defense, but there are other options. Golem. I hate this card. It is such a nuisance to play against, and I don't really play Golem decks. To be nice, C tier. Hunter. B tier. Great anti-air and a shotgun mechanic is pretty cool. However, it's kind of useless on offense, but he is God tier on defense. Expo. The card that makes everyone's day worse. I slap my friend every time he says he likes to play Expo. This campy piece of garbage is so annoying and not even that good. Since unlike Mortar, it can be countered by melee units. This thing's just annoying and a straight up worse Mortar, so it gets F tier. Princess. This is one of my favorite cards, and she's decent, although she isn't the greatest right now. She is kind of annoying, so she'll get B tier. Sparky. I hate this card. This card seems to get one shot when I use it, but never die when my opponent uses it, and then it proceeds to one shot all my cards. C tier. Log. One of my friends decided to rank this one, and he put it at A tier for an unspecified reason. In my opinion, it's a very good spell with good damage for the cost, but its only weakness is the fact that it can't hit air, so I'm gonna move it to S tier. Miner. A tier. Consistent chip damage and a good mini tank. Inferno Dragon. C tier. Good on defense and can be good on offense, except anything with multiple units completely counter it. Electro Wizard. Another annoying card that I seem to face constantly for some reason. He's not even that good. B tier. He can get almost fully countered by an Ice Spirit for God's sake. Ram Rider. B tier. The main thing making her worse than the Hog Rider is her cost and her charge. She moves at the speed of smell before she charges up, but she can be used defensively. Megaknight. The mid-ladder menace is a C tier card. Such an overused card that can deal devastating amounts of damage if you have a bad cycle, but he is also so slow that you can easily keep him jumping around for a very long time while the towers shoot him. Firecracker. Another mid-ladder card, who at first I thought was terrible since she's a free King Tower activation. Although she can consistently get damage on towers from afar and has good area damage, making her very strong on defense, A tier. Evo Firecracker. Okay, yes, I know she's not as good now, but currently she's the only Evo I own, as I'm hesitant to use my Evo shards on Valkyrie. Since she's still good at getting chip damage and can be used multiple times in a match due to how cheap she is, I think she's still good, but definitely not as broken as the launch Evo Firecracker. A tier. Earthquake. I get the purpose of this card, but I never find a reason to use it. However, I do remember one time where my friend tried to counter a minion horde with it, to which I laughed at him because that was such a stupid decision. B tier. Lawbreakers. S tier. So cheap and cyclable. It can't get consistent damage, but that doesn't bring it down too much. Paired with Miner, you basically can't stop them. Electro Dragon. F tier. This card just kind of sits there and is a bit of a nuisance. It lacks health and its attack isn't that strong. Ice Wizard. F tier. He dies extremely easily, is terrible on offense, and is mildly good on defense. Even so, he doesn't have enough damage. I get he's supposed to be a support unit, but his slow just isn't enough. And his spawn damage is one of the most useless things ever. Royal Ghost, A tier. He is such a nuisance and is reliable on offense and defense. Phoenix, I don't get why everyone says this card is super OP. It's like Mega Minion but a bit better, B tier. Graveyard. I once said that this was the worst legendary, but now I think that the worst legendary is Ice Wizard. Now I think it's a lot better than it used to be now that I've gotten to use it a bit, so it gets B tier, especially because it's OP against the Cannoneer. Rascals. D tier, kind of expensive for a weaker version of a Knight and Archers, although the Rascal Girls do have extremely high damage. The Rascal Boy is kind of useless though. Heal Spirit, F tier. It's the worst spirit, and does basically nothing. Low damage and a heal doesn't add too much. Bowler, C tier, a bit like the Wizard in that I don't know why he's so hated. He is extremely annoying and counters a lot of cards, but he does have the weakness of not being able to hit air units, and I suppose his slow speed. Electro Giant, B tier. He's certainly not weak, but he can be easily countered if you kite him to the middle or use something with high damage but low attack rate. Lava Hound, C tier. Only good in Lava Loon decks and is kinda hard to play. He's just kind of a better golem. Bandit, B tier. Can be good for chip but gets countered way too easily. Magic Archer, C tier. Dies way too easily. Royal Delivery, D tier. I suppose it has high damage, but it is only good to counter a push, and it's not even great at that since it takes a year for the box to drop. Elixir Golem, D tier. Another annoying card that everyone hates. The annoying part is the fact that it never seems to die. It even gives your opponent Elixir. Executioner, C tier. Sure, he's tanky, but he attacks slowly, moves slowly, and is just kind of meh. Goblin Drill, C tier. It's kind of a more consistent Goblin Barrel, except it's easily countered still. Rage, B tier. The fact it deals damage while boosting your units makes it really good, but it doesn't do as much damage as the other small spells. Lumberjack, B tier. It's a great melee unit and the rage it drops is a nice bonus, but it's a little expensive and easily countered. Night Witch, C tier. The bats are extremely annoying and when paired with a tank, she's impossible to kill. The bats also stack up extremely quickly. Her only weakness is swarms since she has no area attack. Elixir Pump, F tier. Any spell can completely render this card useless, since it only produces 8 elixir for the cost of 6 over the course of about a minute. Any damage makes this card a waste of elixir, and it's really only good in decks filled with expensive units. Cannon Cart, great on defense, but it's a little expensive. It's a good support card, but has a huge weakness to swarms. B tier. Mirror, D tier. For the extra cost, having 2 of 1 unit isn't that good. There are only very rare scenarios where this is actually helpful. Tornado, A tier. The cool stuff you can do with this card is awesome, like predictions and King Tower activations. Clone, D tier. Outside of very rare scenarios, this card never gets any value as everything it does just dies instantly. Fisherman, C tier. It's really only good defensively, but outside of that it has low damage and the grapple isn't very good offensively. Mother Witch, B tier. Against certain decks, Mother Witch is an absolute menace, but against tanky decks she's useless. She also gets hard countered by Fireball. Golden Knight, C tier. He's the worst champion, but he is a champion, so he's at least okay. The dash range nerf kind of killed him in my opinion, since now his dash rarely chains to other units. Even something like a Goblin Gang he can't consistently kill 3 of the goblins on. Even outside of his dash, his DPS is kind of low, and his health is kind of subpar, so he can get countered by almost anything that he can one-shot. Archer Queen, A tier. She's a great anti-hero, but you have to know how to use her. She gets great value on defense, and if she connects to the tower with her ability, the tower gets melted, although getting her to the tower is really hard. Skeleton King, A tier. Good damage, and if you charge his ability fully, he can summon a ton of skeletons that will melt towers. He's good defensively, he's good offensively, his only weakness is air attacks. Mighty Miner, B tier. His ability isn't that useful, but his normal attack is insane. The ramp up damage is crazy since it ramps up extremely fast, and he can delete anything tanky. He also has pretty high health, so he can easily take towers. His bomb is decent against swarms and other things that counter him, but it loses a lot of its effectiveness if your opponent knows how to counter it. Monk, B tier. Its cost is really his main weakness. His high health, high damage, high knockback, and the only ability to counter spell cycling, which is OP. But it costs 6 elixir to use him fully, and he's not that great on offense. Little Prince, B tier. He's not as good as he was on launch, but he's still great on defense since he's so cheap and can survive a fireball. Plus he can summon a tank on offense, which just makes him way better. However, with recent nerfs, it takes longer for him to speed up his attacks, and Gargan isn't nearly as strong, but he's still really good. And that's the tier list. I can't wait to get a ton of comments on why my opinions suck, since I put E-barbs in A tier and stuff. With that said, here's a video I'm sure you'll enjoy. Subscribe for a good day, and see you guys next time.